All right, Janice, first. So we already know just about everything there is to know about Janet, except that she loves single malt scotch and cheese. And unfortunately, now that she's the program manager at Estes Park Economic Development Corporation, EDC, she can't find the single malt scotch in Estes.
Really? We make lots of other good stuff. We do not make scotch.
All right, Janet, it's all yours.
All right. So let me get screen shared here real quick and we'll get this up and running.
Jen, I bet you could find some at the Scottish Irish Festival.
I have plans for that, let me tell you.
Just say it.
Yeah.
Just say it.
Just a thought.
Okay, we're good. Okay, so today you're gonna get me in with a little bit about leadership skills. So I'm gonna give you about 10 minutes of conversation around leadership skills because I got the call for this on Monday. So here we go. Okay. Okay, core leadership skills. Most of us here either have to lead businesses, lead teams, or ourselves, which is typically the hardest challenge you're gonna have in leadership, is leading yourself. What are the 3 core leadership skills you have to lead well?
Communication.
Okay, what else?
Clarity. Clarity.
Okay. These are good answers. They're not the ones I'm looking for.
Vision.
What do you have to have?
Self-awareness.
Bing, first one. That's one of them. Where are the other 2?
Wanting to.
Ryan says compassion.
Compassion. God, we could use a lot more of that. Okay, so this is what most of the leadership schools out there will tell you. Okay, first off, self-awareness, right? You can't lead if you don't understand where you are in space, what your strengths are, and whether or not you are capable of employing them in the situation you are in, right? Have you ever walked into a room and realized, oh, this guy has no idea where he is, right? We've all met those people, right? Second, self-discipline. How many of you get up every morning and joyfully get to your computer to do your work? That is not nearly enough hands. Let me tell you, okay? So that's the second piece. The third piece is self-confidence. Because if you don't believe you can do it, you don't, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about self-confidence today as one of those 3. And as I'm building out this presentation, I'd love your feedback on how it's landing for you. But on the secondary piece, I have a second ask and I'll get to that at the end. So how do we define self-confidence?
How you think about yourself.
Okay,
Knowing that if you try something, you'll succeed.
perfect, right? So there's an actual definition, but really self-confidence is an attitude about your own skills and abilities, and you have realistic expectations, you have realistic goals, you know what you can do and believe it's actually possible. But I really like this last part here because this is the part I see least often. You can handle the criticism that comes with it, right? So let's talk about, where does confidence come from? You didn't just wake up one morning and suddenly think you could conquer the world. I don't know, maybe you did. But where does self-confidence actually come from?
Single malt scotch.
There are days. Hemingway had this great phrase I live off of, is that you write drunk and edit sober. Because the drunk part just gets you through the piece, right? So there are 5 steps to confidence. First one's awareness. I know what needs to be done. I know what to do, right? Second step, I know how to do it. Okay? There's some of us who get hung up on that, right? Like, do not ask me to solve calculus problems. That is not going to happen, right? That is what Google is for.
That's what YouTube's for.
Right. Possibility. I feel capable of doing it. Okay. Fourth step, I expect good results, right? Do you feel confident about something if you expect it to turn out badly? Do you even attempt it if you really expect it to turn out badly?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Sometimes, right? And it usually has to do with family,
Yeah.
but we do it anyway. Okay. And then resilience. I will be okay if the results aren't what I expect. Okay. This is an interesting chart because there's something that happens in the middle of this chart. Do I have anybody in here who ever did track or field? Beth, come here.
Run up there, please.
Come up here.
I can walk, I can.
Okay, so that's okay. I'm not gonna make you do anything complicated.
Okay, great.
So you're gonna stand here and I'm gonna look right about there,
Okay.
maybe there. Do you think you can jump from that cup to this cup?
No.
Okay. How about that?
No.
Maybe.
Can you jump that high?
I could step.
Okay.
Does that
Fantastic.
count?
It does.
I can't jump very well.
Okay. We're clear on,
Yeah.
on.
Yes.
Very clear, that's great. So now, if we were to do this, and I move it just a little bit, make you stretch,
Mhm.
you could probably still do that step.
Yeah.
What if I were to put a pit of water in between there?
That'll be more challenging.
Would you still feel confident about being able to do
I'd be curious. More than
it? What if I stuck a bottomless pit with a Balrog in the bottom of it?
Then I'd say, nah, less confident.
Okay, why?
Because there's enough of a probability I'd fall in or get tripped up, so.
So this is where you get stuck right
It
here.
gets lower.
Yep, right here. Thank you.
It's the same distance.
It is.
It is.
It's exactly the
Same
same distance.
distance, so you just gotta,
So what Beth has done is illustrate for me the two zones, right? Our first zone is the fact zone. I either know what to do or I don't. I know how to do it or I don't. The second part is the emotional zone, right? This is all about emotion. I feel capable of doing it. I expect good results. If I've got a Balrog coming up in the middle of me, that may not be a good result, right? And I expect that if it doesn't go well, I'll be okay. Which is why I don't jump out of airplanes. Right?
That's so
Because if it doesn't go well, I'm not going to be okay. Right? So confidence in relation to the workplace, the objectives are professional, right? Everything that you want to get done in your work with the confidence you need is professional. The journey is emotional. So if you're not tying your own emotions into the process of how it goes, you don't do it. So as leaders of people and teams, the most important thing you can do is help your team go through the journey of that confidence to the resilience to be able to make it work. Does that make sense? Okay. So the interesting thing about this is it's never just once, right? Because we continue to do stuff over and over and over again, and some of us keep doing it even though we know we're not going to get a good result. Success will sustain your confidence. The problem is that failure compounds the problem, right? Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. If you fail once, okay, I can get back on my horse. You fail twice, I don't know if I want to get out of bed today. You fail 3 times, I'm not doing that again. You have success 3 times, you're like, great, I can do that again. But it resets every time you do it.
when that come back to confidence with the failure, then
Good question. And that's the emotional journey you as a leader have to help the person walk through. Okay. So where on the confidence spectrum do you most often get stuck? You all look very introspective. So, that's what I have for you today. Questions?
You put a
back on the spectrum.
I am
Yeah,
just getting ready to do that.
that.
Just getting ready to do that here. So awareness, ability, possibility, predictability, resilience.
So, so the one thing that I guess, and I'm just thinking about my own introspectiveness. You're talking about how I've made it through stuff, and I've had total failures, total crashes. And, the fourth one, I expect good results. I think that one is important, but I think number 5 is the one that really counts, because if you can build in resilience, all those failures or near fault where flat out total crashes, if you can work through that emotional aspect of it, there's always a results piece. And that's, to me, I would argue the easier piece. It's more the emotional side. It's the tougher one.
Yeah.
That's when you really get into something that I'd even refer to as like a 6th gear. That's beyond what most people have if they haven't had one of those truly difficult set of circumstances to work through, and then work through it
And survive.
survive.
And do.
Because it's just, whether it's a personal thing or a business thing, I don't think it really matters, because it's still your emotional piece that's part of it, so.
So I think if you have really high resiliency and really low ability, that's just foolishness.
Well, there is that too. I'm assuming somewhat reasonable stuff.
Right.
Most people going through burnout stop here. Right? Because that's where we've gone from fact to emotion, and it stops here. Especially if you're exhausted. And how many people in the workforce right now are exhausted? Right? Peter, you had a comment?
Yeah, so for me, 5 is all about risk and how comfortable you are with uncertainty. I talked to someone last night, and the idea of being driven by fear, because fear of the unknown. Right? They would rather keep hitting their head against the wall for something that's painful that they're doing now, rather than take a chance at something that could be a lot better, but also, at least in their mind, could be a lot worse.
There's an interesting correlation between the pandemic and the Great Resignation, because we spent 2 years in what was a tremendous amount of uncertainty, whether it was personal, professional, health-wise, what the heck is going on in the world, we spent a lot of time in uncertainty, and a lot of people figured out how to handle uncertainty better than they ever have before, which meant, to your point, that we are now able to walk away from jobs that are shitty without knowing what's next. And we saw that, and we still see that, right? So that level of uncertainty, when you understand how to manage it, allows it to compound and create the emotional safe zone you need to be in to actually be self-confident.
Beautifully put.
I don't know how many people have read Anti-Fragile from Nicholas Taleb or Nassim Taleb, but it's kind of maybe a little bit of splitting hairs, but the idea, he talks about it as a different concept than resilience, because resilience implies like this static idea of I will be okay, or things will be okay, whereas the concept of anti-fragility is that not only will I be okay, I will be better because I've gone through this experience. So I will have grown.
I've not
I'm gonna
read that
take-
one. I'm gonna have to.
It's fantastic.
Anti-fragility,
Anti-Fragile is the book.
anti-fragile. Okay.
Same guy that wrote Black Swan, I think.
Interesting. Okay.
But the idea being that you're not just okay. A system doesn't just persist. It learns and it grows and it gets better for having gone through these stresses.
Mhm.
So even if I don't get the results I expect, I will be better for having done this and having done this experience, and I'll learn and grow with this going forward. So just maybe a small potential concept. It's not just about being okay. It's about being what happens if I don't do this, right? If I don't go through this experience,
Yeah.
I won't have this opportunity to learn and grow.
That's what failure is. Opportunity.
Reframed lovely. Yes. You can look at it that way. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what resilience is. It's like, how do you handle failure?
Right.
Can you handle it and go, if you can't handle it, you're going into the deep
Well,
hole.
remember that definition? The ability to handle criticism.
Yep.
Same thing.
Yep.
You had a comment and I don't know you, I'm sorry.
You asked, where do you get stuck? What would your response be to someone who says that they don't get stuck on any of these things?
Great, what are you achieving? And when they tell me, well, that's when I say, I think you probably need to look back at our first core leadership skill, which is self-awareness, right? Because you can't have self-confidence without self-awareness, because you have to be able to walk yourself through this stuff.
You know, one of the interesting things, Jenna, as you're talking about this is, I work with students and one of the things that I'll talk to them about is self-confidence, which is really kind of what we're talking about, well, what you are talking about here. And the example I give to them is when you see somebody come into the room, you can tell whether they're confident or not, right? It's a question, and they'll see some heads nod. And then the next thing I'll share with them is that that self-confidence is oftentimes a result of the stories that they're telling in their head. And if they're not their own best friend, if they're constantly degrading themselves, that wears away at all this stuff here.
Yep. And those stories typically eat at possibility. Sometimes predictability, but mostly they start with possibility. So here is my ask of all of you, because I don't want to take up too much time. I'm not sure how much we've got here. So here's my ask of all of you. I am in the process of developing some keynote speeches that I'm going to be shopping around. One of the things I need are LinkedIn recommendations on whether or not I am a good speaker, a clear speaker, and you learn things when I talk. So if you feel like that's something you would be comfortable doing, I would love to have those.
Where do you see that on LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Okay, Ben?
One last thought.
Mhm.
I remember seeing a video, we'll probably find it, but it's kids and adults being asked the same question. Can you sing? Can you dance? Can you do all these things? I'm kind of interested where, where you would put that, or maybe somehow work that in as far as like kids necessarily, they may not necessarily have the awareness, but they have the ability, right? It's just different. And yeah, absolutely have a lot more.
Their bar for what they expect as good results is different.
Right.
Because adults have the expectation, will other people enjoy it? Kids have the expectation, will I enjoy it?
Yeah.
They're two very different things.
Okay.
You talked about focused on self-confidence, right? Of the three, the awareness and discipline. I coach engineers turned managers. They have the self-confidence in abundance, maybe too much.
Most engineers do. It's math. It's hard not to be right.
And they have a high level of self-discipline. These are all-star professional performers, right? They're going to climb the ladder. The self-awareness is what's missing. And so, you know, just that step of asking for coaching in the first place or being receptive to coaching is huge. What are some of the pitfalls, or if someone's not self-aware?
I usually start with a series of questions of, have you noticed people reacting in these ways to what you do? Have you noticed outcomes that are not ideal on a personal level within the organization? Right? Why do you think that is? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, getting them to observe
Okay.
their own behavior and others.
Right? When they start to look at their own behavior one way or the other, most often when the engineers I have dealt with, and my father's an engineer, so I've had lots of experience. They understand how to get a problem solved. They don't always understand that then they have to get other people on board to help them solve the problem. And that's where it becomes, can you persuade other people to get on board? And most engineers will go, well, that's not my job. And you're like, welcome to management.
You will, like, you'll see a lot of, obviously, you probably experienced a lot, but people get promoted to a level of confidence, right? Or where they don't necessarily have that skill set, like you just described. I found a lot in dealing with those type of scenarios, especially with engineers, is that if you can help them understand it in their context, right? They're looking at it in a problem in a mathematical perspective, right? So if you help them ask those questions and help them connect the dots, well, what's the common denominator in all of these different scenarios? Oh, these are all instances where I did X, right? Or where I didn't do X. Then you help them draw it into a realm that they're familiar with by giving them some sort of concrete fact versus just like, oh, I don't know what's happening. Like, oh, well, you were the central point in all these different scenarios. Maybe it's something that you do. Maybe it's you.
All right, well, Jenna, thanks for filling in last minute. This was fantastic. Appreciate it. Grab another cup of coffee and we will continue the discussion.
Stan, how you been?
Of course. Self-awareness.
Cool.
This is good.
Did you get value out of it? Was I engaging?
Really? Get ready for the day.
Yeah,
After hours tomorrow night?
And Janet does a good job.
Not
right now, I'm actually
in the process.
Really?
Yeah, oh, it's right on.
No?
Oh, that's like, I was like, really, I still gotta pay.
Good, just, you know, some are not,
If I want
yeah.
to do chambers,
That's the deal, is the chamber doesn't have enough funding at the moment.
So when my business partners are out of town for a couple of days.
I might call in. It's all right.
Just trying to stay cool. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
they'll be back on
Part of it.
Thursday. Tomorrow, yeah, they'll be back tomorrow, so then it'll get crazy.
Oh, of knowing Estes itself? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I-
She's got the most positive.
That's good.
I have.
We got a good meeting.
Oh, okay. Better you than me.
I'm looking forward to seeing your sisters.
Okay.
I'm not picturing this very well.
I kind of want to go to one. She's like, well, I know the guy who knows. The guy who used to have Ryan.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, Ryan Brooks.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the vice president.
That's a lot of networking.
What do you want?
Yeah.
Well, because I
Stanley has
took
the.
the heart.
Yeah, the Stanley is fundamentally and well paid.
Well, you gotta move forward, right? Can't back up. Right. Well, as long as you don't have to
Sounds like I
maintain
should
17-hour days, definitely, you know, yeah. Once in a while. that could be good.
No.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah?
Oh, yeah, I'd avoid this.
I'm not
That's
going.
good.
I'm not going after.
That's good, yeah.
That's not my-
I don't know, yeah, I like that, yeah.
I mean, it's like.
I like to work like balance. Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, I know.
I kind of like finding different-
Yeah,
it was funny because the last
no,
post that I did, I was like,
How
oh,
old's your kid?
I'm also- it's funny 'cause
Okay.
oh, the last post.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was just like, I wonder how I could have done that. You also have a teenager, my wife actually, she has a design background.
Enjoy that, enjoy that. Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, it's good.
Next one, like.
Been through the rain before. Yeah. Nieces and nephews.
All right.
I gotta give a pat on business.
I think kids are.
But you know what, I like it like this.
Oh, you're great.
No, look at it like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yesterday.
So married now. I like
Oh, leadership now, mentoring.
Nice.
Come on.
Well, at my core, my background is in advertising, so I do branding and design and photography is the creative side, which is where I come from.
So I'll probably
But then
shoot
we have
you
two companies. I don't know if you
next
Mike,
week to sit down.
Mike comes sometimes, but
I'll let you look at my 5
the
different
city
spreadsheets.
that covers, yeah, that's what covers. And
They're
Street
gonna
Defenders,
upstairs
yeah,
now.
that's one of our
Yeah,
companies.
Let's see, hang on.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, we're partners in that.
We are
and
going
Color
to
Pop.
continue the
Portable
the
coloring.
discussion.
Theme, talk about that.
Hey, guys.
What?
Also, if you haven't met Ian, and so he presented, was it last week?
Yep.
Yeah, on why not to hire him for financial planning. Which, I don't know, did Nate ever call you back? Is he gonna sign up?
I don't know.
So turns out Ian is also or was a soccer ref at a pro level. And in conversation with him and someone else I met at the chamber in Windsor last week, I got free tickets. So I got to take my boys to the Hailstorm, the new Northern Colorado team. I have a lot of questions for you about how the game actually works and what the refs were doing on the field. That was a ton of fun. So if you love soccer, if you want to check out the Hailstorm, just want to meet someone new, meet Ian. He's a pretty awesome guy. All right. So Jana had tons of time to prepare her presentation in 3 days. I was notified last night at 12 hours ago. Yeah. I thought, oh, I can teach something, but I don't want to teach something. So I'm going to facilitate a discussion. I want to talk about mentoring. And before I do that, a fun fact about me to continue the theme here of how we introduce people. I was homeschooled my entire life. I didn't go to school until I went to college. So my first experience with tests was the ACT. That was the first test I ever took. And then went to Texas Tech and got a degree in engineering and then joined ExxonMobil. So I went out of my comfort zone very quickly from my room, waking up around 10 o'clock, playing guitar and reading a history book. And that was about my schooling in high school, to ACT to ExxonMobil. And while at ExxonMobil, massive corporation, they've got the leadership development stuff down pat. They're going to turn you into the next CEO, right? Everyone is on the track. Your first 3 years, you're going to get all the experiences you need. You're going to get all the education you need, and they're going to try to retain you for 30 years. And one piece of that is giving you an official mentor. So I was given a mentor. Who here has ever been given a mentor in their job? How well did that work out? Sometimes you get lucky, right? But it is a matter of luck. And my mentor was a great guy, but we never connected. I never really opened up to him. I was more posturing, like I didn't want to be seen as the unintelligent one or the weak one. I didn't want his feedback to go to my manager or anything like that. But thankfully they switched my mentor. They switched my official mentor because they saw there wasn't the connection. So they gave me someone else. And this was exactly the guy I needed. And the advice he gave me 12 years ago still resonates with me. He was not someone I opened up to a whole lot. He wasn't very friendly. He was a very gruff guy, but we made a connection and I trusted him. And this relationship was built on that trust. And I knew that he had my best interests at heart. And so he had been at the company for 30 years, traveled the world. He was also very jaded by the company, even though he was a career Exxon Mobilite. And I was growing my family and thinking about moving. And I asked him, what do you think? Should I hold off on having kids? Should I hold off on building a house or whatever it was? And he, we may have only had mentoring for 5 minutes in our entire experience as mentor mentee. And he said, Dane, don't plan your life around the business because they sure as hell aren't planning their business around your life. Hey, great perspective. And that was the perspective I needed as a 20-year-old trying to succeed in my career. So I haven't always been an entrepreneur, and now I am. I haven't always been the one willing to ask for help. I've gotten a lot better at that, still growing there. And I've realized that that's kind of been the theme for me of mentorship and the role it's played and asking for help. I'm going to open up discussion for you in a minute, but I want to hear about the mentors who have made a difference in your career I think we all have, it's easier to identify the mentors maybe in high school or in school. It seems like school is just the prime place for people who care about you and want you to succeed and they challenge you. But I want to hear about entrepreneurs or mentors you've had in your entrepreneurship journey, the people who've given you the advice at the right time. And what was it? Who were they? While you're thinking about that, I was trying to think about 1 Million Cups and the community we have here. And you've been here long enough to know that 1 Million Cups is not a network of clients and investors. It may happen. That's not the intention. 1 Million Cups is a community of support. Entrepreneurship, as you all know, can be very disheartening, it can be discouraging, it can be very exciting, and then disheartening again. So in your career and your life, in your entrepreneurship journey, who has been a mentor to you? Tell us a short story, 1 to 2 minute story about who that person was, Beth.
Mine started before I was an entrepreneur. It started as an entrepreneur at a major chemical company. And there was a guy who interviewed me, and I thought I totally blew the interview. It wasn't until later that I found out, this is actually after I left the company after about 5 years, that he was a sponsor. So he was even beyond a mentor, but he was very silent in the background. And he set me up for a worldwide redesign project for the HR function. So I went totally out of my job onto this project for 2 years. Had to come up with some really innovative stuff, and then I had to go sell it to a division. They had to buy it. So I had to have a budget, perform all that stuff. Never heard of any of that stuff before. And after that project, I had to leave because I couldn't work at a corporation anymore. I was like broken. And that was the very beginnings of me starting to really consider entrepreneurship as a career. So it started really as a person who kind of pushed me out of the corporate world without pushing me out.
What was his name?
His name was John Roth. He was a member of Mensa. And
What were some traits?
pardon me?
What were some traits of John in that story? Like I assume he saw potential and he challenged you.
Well, what happened in the interview, and I think that's where it started, is he had asked me some question about diversity. And I said, no, that's the wrong way to look at it. This is the way you should look at it. And he kind of looked at me. He's an older gentleman, right? And that's when I thought, oh, shoot, I blew the interview. There's no way I'm going to get a job. And it, in fact, happened where they ended up hiring me. And I think in that interview, when I pushed back on him, he said, okay, here's somebody who's going to think differently than me. And, you know, I give him a lot of credit because he set me up for many, as I look back on it after somebody told me that, you know, this guy was ready to quit his job and was going to leave his job as the senior person in the company unless they put me on that redesign project. That was how much faith he had in me. So I think it was the fact that I pushed back on him, because I also noticed, you know, Jana, you were talking about self-awareness. When people, senior people, I learned, who are very confident, I would sometimes argue overconfident in their skill sets, if you push back on them in a way that they realize that they're not thinking about everything, or they haven't looked at the whole picture, or they're missing something, they really respect that pushback. They may not like it, you know. I don't
That's
like
why
it.
the most powerful thing you can ever do with an executive is to ask good questions.
Exactly. In fact, that's what you do. You don't have answers, you ask good questions.
Yep.
But it was that dynamic, I think, that he then picked up on.
Mutual respect and your authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, it just came out of my mouth. It was like, no filter. Afterwards, I thought, oh, Beth, you just.
All right, who else has a story of mentorship? Oh,
Yeah, two parts to this. One, a couple mentors that stick out on my path were people I met when I lived in Seattle. I lived there for 7 years. John Hanson and Chris Smoji. So they were two angel investors. And the two lessons that I learned from both of them is they think big, big vision, big possibility. And I met both of these men, I'd say at least it's been 20 years, maybe more. And so that's always stuck with me. And that's just who they are and how they are. And the other is that they move fast. And I know my speed, I have speed, and I know it doesn't, I have to be very careful when I work with teams because I do like to think big and I like to move fast now. And when you're working with other people, there's a lot to manage, and you know, anyways, that's a whole other topic. But that's the two of my mentors. And then the other thing I just want to mention to the group as an observation. So I always desired to have women mentors as well. I wanted women mentors. And I found when I was doing some work with Biz Girls, which was a nonprofit spun out from the Rockies Venture Club, I was the first executive director of this. So we helped teenage girls start their own businesses. And part of that model was we recruited business women to be their mentors during 1 week. And I had a hard time recruiting women mentors because they all said they were afraid they would fail.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to share that with the group. And this goes back to part of what the self-confidence. These were successful business women working with teenage girls. It's like, you have something to offer. The commitment was meet the first day, midweek, end of the week, come see their pitch. So I actually have to leave. I'm a believer of bringing in all kinds of people, and your men and women, we're all in this together. And that was a very sad realization for me to come to. So anyways, thank you.
We'll see you at the SBDC in a couple weeks.
Yes, that sounds great. We can't wait.
Mike?
So I'm going to give a little different version. One of my mentors was, I was actually hired to be his boss. But he taught me how to think more strategically, think of not just this step, but what the next step should be. If they react this way, what my next step should be.
Mentorship can come from anyone, from anywhere. What about that individual made them a good mentor? They had a knowledge or perspective you needed?
So it was actually in politics. So I was a banker. He was a political guy. He taught me about the political stuff and the strategy.
How many of you have mentors now?
One of the things I've found is part of my line of business is I'm an executive coach, and I tell people all the time, okay, you need a coach, right? And so I had one of my mentors look at me and go, "Great, who's your coach?" I'm like, "Beg your pardon? You can't expect your clients to do the thing you're telling them to do if you don't do it too." So if you're not attending new learning webinars, if you're not attending workshops, if you don't have your own coach, you're not walking your own talk, and nobody believes that you're worth your time. Change my business model.
I used to believe that mentors was someone that you had for your whole life. Like you would propose to them, "Hey, will you be my mentor?" And then they're your mentor for the next 30 years. And that was a big, that sounds really weird. So I wouldn't ask anyone, right? But they've happened organically and naturally and for a short time. And that's something I've noticed in my own experiences over the past 12 years. But the mentors I've had it's been one conversation or 5, but it's always been focused, and they've always been trying to draw something out of me, build.
Yeah, I was gonna just bring up the concept of plural mentors, that you don't learn everything from one person. And in fact, you want a team at any point in your career. If you read the Wall Street Journal, I forgot what section that's in, but every week, right, they talk about some person who's, up there in the business, and they all have their mentors.
From other
Who
companies.
they are and what they're trying to learn from each particular mentor. So it's a little different concept than having just one.
There's an article shared with me this week about building your personal board of advisors.
Right.
And so they were kind of poo-pooing the idea of mentorship. It's like, no, who do you need in your life to teach you about these things? Don't ask them, because that ruins it. And if you're going to formalize it and create like a board of directors for yourself, you can, but just find the people you need and build that network around you.
One of my earliest mentors actually calls it her Jedi Council.
Jedi Council, I like that. All right. Next piece of this. How many of you are mentors now? Like I mentioned, that what this community is one of support. It's not networking for business. You might get that great, but is there someone here you're mentoring? Is there someone here who's your mentor? So I want you to volunteer right now. What skill set do you have that we don't know about that you can mentor in? Are you really good at making connections, Ian? Are you really good at managing money, Leandra? Are you really good at public speaking, Jana? Are you really good at business, Mike? Like, what skill do you have that you would say, if you had a name tag and said, I mentor this role, what is it? Or I mentor this skill, what is that? John,
What's stopping you?
what do you mean?
You know, like a block, it's, you know, there's a couple people I've coached.
So you mentor fearful
Like,
kids.
Well,
You're
I
afraid
mean,
I'll
it's
tell you
like,
to do
you
it.
know, what's stopping you from being successful? And that's what we work on, you know, the people that keep hitting the wall, where I can find ways around the wall.
I can vouch for that. If you're lacking self-confidence right now, talk to John. What else can you mentor on, Peter?
The technology.
Technology, yeah. I mean, have you guys seen how fast he's iterated his website and his app? All right, Beth,
So I can mentor with helping people understand revenue model, how you make money. Not so much with coachings, but more so in terms of a business process.
all right, and flip that question around. What would help you? What would you go to a mentor for right now?
Connections.
See what I don't see. Connections. See what I don't see. Okay. So you need a good question asker. I'm a good question asker. Okay.
Marketing.
This isn't what your business needs help with. It's what you need. No, that's a good one though. I mean, that
You need help.
overcoming that. barrier to market. And we've got people who are great at that. Yeah.
This is something I've actually, we're getting vulnerable here, folks. Hold on. Something I've dealt with on and off in various pieces of my life of what happens if I'm actually successful. I am sometimes more scared of being wildly successful than failing hard. And so that prevents that next big leap from happening, right? What does that actually look like? And so I have to go back on a periodic basis and look at, why the hell am I scared of being successful? Like, where does that come from and what is it? What does that mean when you do it? Is it the amplification of the lens of suddenly more people are looking at you and it's a bigger stage to fail on? Is it, I now have to learn new skills and I'm fucking tired? Like, what is that piece that's driving me from not always wanting to take that next step where I'm fully capable of it, but not always willing and working through that space? Just me?
I think for me, a lot of a part of that, the similar fear, I guess, is the expansion of responsibility for other people.
Yes.
So if you scale your success inherently, that typically means more people are somehow tied to you and potentially their livelihood, if you're, you know, a successful business operator, owner, you know, their emotional well-being, depending on how you're related to them. You're becoming more and more responsible for, or depending on how you look at it, the well-being of other people. And that's scary to me. That's something that has definitely held me back.
You know, what's your leadership skills? That's, you know, the fear of having people working underneath you. It's like, okay.
Yeah, but
Well,
there's,
And
I mean,
mentorship.
there's minimal. I mean, I get that. But there's, you know, but it all comes down to, okay, how well are my leadership skills?
And I feel like mentorship happens, prerequisite is vulnerability and trust, right? And just a couple of weeks ago, I said that I was needing help on outsourcing sales. And Allison Prophet was like, don't do that. You should talk to me. And so I've been talking with Allison Prophet over the past couple of weeks. And so that's why we ask this at the end of every meeting. So we'll segue to this now. What do you need help with? in your business, what do you need help with right now? That someone in this room might be the person to help, might have the connection, and then we'll wrap things up. What do you need help with? Peter needs help with marketing.
More hours in the day.
Ian needs more hours.
That's a time suck.
Yeah. So for me, it's understanding how government operates.
Good luck.
Mr. Bennett.
Oh, see, there's a president.
Local government.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right, and who's had a, oh, go ahead.
I'm seeking connections to women touched by cancer.
Okay.
Sorry, what did you
Say it
Can you
again.
speak?
Connections to women touched by cancer, whether they have it themselves or it's in their family.
Lisa, right?
Yes.
All right, who's had a win? Oh, Jesse.
Yeah, I need some support about technology. I talk to
All right, cool. Who's had a win this week?
I finished a 7-month project. On Tuesday, Monday.
Nice. Nice. Those things. Nice thing about projects is they end.
Yes. Sometimes.
Jenna.
I now have 112 hours of PowerPoint content that is set up and ready to go for leadership, operations, and strategic planning for businesses.
So I should have just asked you to do both.
Yeah.
sessions.
Let me tell you, it's pretty astounding. I have to admit that when I was growing up, I always felt like I was going to build something or create something. And at this point in my life, I figure out what I create as PowerPoint slides. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
As long as you get them out into the world, it's a benefit. All right, we've got open slots in August and September we're booking for. And if you have a backup, just let us know that you are available to be called in 24-hour notice. That would be super awesome. So John, Peter, already great backup. Again, we'll be at the SBDC at Front Range Community College all of August and the first week of September. And we'll be back here, and we will be here all of next year as well.
So for anybody that doesn't know, that's south on Shields, about 10-ish miles, right?
Shields and Harmony?
Shields and Harmony, yeah.
Shields and Harmony. So we will keep you all notified and posted. We'll send out an email. We'll update our website, and we will hammer it into your brains here in person as well. So,
You guys gonna be doing any like physical stuff there too, to direct people there? Poster.
it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, we'll work with it. We'll try to figure
We've been thinking
something out.
about this since Friday evening. Around 9. All right, well, thanks for coming. Grab more coffee, and good to see everyone online. Thanks for joining us. See you next week. Here next week.